shit. You done fucked up now. Ain't nothing but a gangsta party.
Hello, Heathens. Today, I have the naked pastor himself with me, David Hayward. You might know him from Instagram or Twitter or perhaps TikTok. And I know that when I first saw his name pop up, I was like, what does that mean? Is this, like, do I want to know what that means? But as it turns out, I did want to know what it meant. And it was not what I thought. I just apparently have a dirty mind. So all of that being said, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. I'm glad I don't have a dirty mind because I'd look a lot different than I do right now. So I am fully clothed.
Yeah, it'd be a much different interview. Maybe you could tell us what the naked pastor actually means.
Yeah. First of all, thanks for having me on your show, and hello everybody out there. Well, I was a pastor at one time, like a real one in a real church. And
a real one, not a fake one.
I started blogging as a pastor in 2005, and there were a lot of pastor bloggers out there, but I wanted mine to be different. I was tired of all the success stories and presumptions and posturing and theological assertions and everything. So I wanted to sort of rip back the curtain and let people see what really goes on in the life of a pastor and their church. And so that's what the naked means. It just means unadorned, no packaging. It's just the real deal. And so I just started just sharing my stories, you know, the ups and downs, the struggles, the conflicts, the frustrations, the doubts, you know, all that stuff that was going on in my life. And I was already an artist for, you know, ever since I can remember. I've been drawing. I grew up in a home where my dad was an artist and he was always painting and stuff. And I decided one day to just try to convey my thoughts through cartoons, and they just took off. And so now that's basically what Naked Pastor, if anybody knows anything about Naked Pastor, it's probably that I'm a cartoonist. And it's probably where they've seen my stuff is in my cartoons. So yeah, that's what's happened. And it just kind of went nuts. And that might have been sort of one of the major catalysts, I suppose, to me leaving the ministry in 2010 and the church. Okay. So that was 12 years ago. And I decided to sort of just leap into Naked Pastor full time, see if I could make it work. And it did.
Yeah. Congratulations. Yeah. What denomination were you a pastor in?
Okay, well, I call myself my own ecumenical movement because I've been in so many
Fair enough.
denominations. I was baptized Anglican and, went to United Church and Methodist Church and Baptist Church and Pentecostal Church and Catholic Church, and you name it. And, in fact, that might be explain why I don't feel any loyalty to anyone or never felt any loyalty to one denomination. But I ended up getting ordained after seminary twice, getting ordained Presbyterian. And then I switched to Vineyard. I don't know if you maybe ever heard of that, but it's kind of a mixture of Baptist and Pentecostal.
Yes.
And that's where I ended up in 2000. And I pastored a church. I started pastoring there in 95, 96, and I left in 2010. So that's 14 years. Yeah.
Wow. So when you left the church, were you deconstructing in any way? Did you end up deconstructing, or do you still sort of hold those beliefs?
No, I started deconstructing when on the day I graduated from seminary.
Okay, please tell me more about this.
Yeah, it was devastating. It was one of my most traumatic experiences. For some reason, I must have had spare time because all the exams were finished, my theses were finished, all this kind of thing, and I was just waiting for graduation day. And I'd been down at Harvard, and I picked up a book. I saw that I was intrigued by the title, called "The Silence of Jesus" by James Breach. It wasn't considered an important theological work, but I was intrigued by the title, and so I started reading it. And basically, his argument is that of all the sayings of Jesus, there might be 7 that are actually authentic. That blew my mind because I was in the deep end with the Bible. Like the Bible and I were totally
besties.
Best friends. Like I still have my Bibles with all the underlining in it and all the notes and all this stuff. Like
were
I was
you
full in.
an inerrantist?
Yes, like I was a full on, like your typical evangelical
same. Theo bro. My favorite.
Not. So I took years of Greek, years of Hebrew, Aramaic, theological French, theological German. My goal was to go, I started my PhD in New Testament studies, and my goal was to become a professor, a scholar, New Testament scholar.
Right.
But, that got sidetracked because of many reasons. I was full in, and I read this book. So I'm reading this book, and it sort of was like, the Jenga block tower, where a block on the bottom was pulled out, and that was the inspiration of Scripture. And the whole tower started weaving back and forth.
Yeah.
And so that's where my deconstruction began. I was so traumatized by this sort of news that maybe the Bible isn't inspired, that my wife actually had to, I had my graduating gown on and everything. And she actually had to grab me by the shoulders and say, "You need to go to graduation." And it was devastating. But that began, it was kind of like a corrupt code was inserted into my brain computer and just started its work of eroding all my beliefs, because all my beliefs hinged on the Bible. Like if the Bible's not inspired, then everything that we get from it may not be either.
Yep.
So that was.
I mean, that's.
Yeah, go ahead.
Growing up evangelical, I've said this a million times. They taught me that if one thing of the Bible isn't true, none of it's true, which is a pretty terrible metric considering some of the things that are in the Bible that are just like talking donkeys. I don't know. Just silly things. But it just generally saying that it doesn't, it's not good, because then as soon as anyone finds something, just one thing, right, then everything starts to fall apart. I know that like one of the major things that I learned that just kind of blew my mind, which is similar to yours, I think, was that the Gospels were not written by Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. They were not 4 eyewitness accounts to the life of Jesus. The people that wrote them didn't even know Jesus. They were written decades after the fact by
Yes.
people in a sophisticated Greek, not like layman's Aramaic. And they were likely just a collection written down of sort of oral tradition that had been repeated over and over.
Yes.
Which, like, actually makes perfect logical sense. But because
Yeah.
I had been taught for so long that the four gospels were four independent eyewitness sources, and that's why you could trust them, and that's why you could believe that Jesus actually said and did and lived all the things. I remember just sitting there, like, my brain just felt like it was splitting in two. Like, how can this be possible? And if that's the case, how do we actually know anything about anything? Now we just know what, like, a bunch of people think Jesus said. Like,
Yeah. So
bonkers.
that's why it was so traumatic to me. I think that's why evangelicals are so fiercely defensive of the Bible. You know, of all my cartoons, there's a few issues or topics that if I cartoon about get the most kickback from, and one of them is the Bible, because I think that's true. If the news gets out there, or that if one part's not true, the whole thing is questionable. I think that's why they're so defensive, and that they can't sacrifice 1 inch of ground.
No, they can't. And also, they've idolized the Bible. Now, they'll never say that, but, like, they've made it this untouchable thing that is perfect and inspired, and again, cannot be criticized, cannot have questions asked, cannot be disproven, cannot be anything. And sorry, but that's an idol. And like you said, they can't cede any ground, because if they even give an inch, then their entire house of cards comes down because of what they believe and teach, not for any other reason, simply because they've said if one bit of it is wrong, it's all wrong.
That's right. Yeah.
And when you make something that rigid, it's impossible for it to sort of sustain much weight.
No, that's right. It's got to break.
Right.
Yeah.
So when you started your deconstruction the day that you graduated, what was that path like afterwards, from graduation to, I assume, being a pastor still?
Yeah. So I had to figure out a way to reconcile this new, insight that I had about the Bible. And this was my own approach. I'm not saying everybody should do it, but this was my approach. Some people were like, "Oh my God, this whole thing's bullshit. I've been duped," and just walk away. Other people double down, and just hardcore believe, and la 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 kind of thing. But my approach was, okay, this has meant a lot to me for like my whole life. I've studied a lot. I got a lot of value from it. So I'm not willing to chuck it, but I'm not willing to swallow it hook, line, and sinker either.
Right.
And then I had to reconcile it with what I was experiencing and learning in real life, like with my Muslim friends, my Buddhist friends, my atheist friends, who were wonderful people and wise people, better people than I. And I had to figure out, okay, this doesn't make sense. And that's how my whole ministry was, my whole period of ministry was, which was about 30 years. Yeah. I had to sort of dance between these two realities. I was waiting for an integration of these two realities where I could value what I'd learned here, and also value what I was learning here somehow. And in 2000, it was in 2009, I actually remember the day where it just, like a final piece of the puzzle, just kind of clicked into place. And I realized, hey, this is what I saw was there's just one reality, and we all have our own interpretation of it, and we all have our own worldview, paradigm, lens, whatever, through which we apprehend it, and then we all have our own language through which we try to articulate it. For me, it was as clear, and I felt so much peace. It was like, this just totally makes sense. I transcended the fight, let's say.
Right.
And there was how it reconciled for me. And so I started freely sharing my thoughts on my blog and everything, and that's what got me in trouble. The next year, I had to leave the ministry.
It's
So,
interesting. I think you're saying you sort of transcended the fight. And I think in a lot
yeah,
of ways I had a similar experience, because once I came to the realization that like I didn't have to change people, I didn't have to convert people, I didn't have to try and convince people of something, like life just becomes a lot more peaceful. And it becomes
oh
like
my,
when you can just take someone as they are, and then you're not doing it with an ulterior
yeah,
motive, like, oh, this is an LGBTQ person, I'm gonna befriend them, but like I have to be constantly on sort of, I don't want to say guard because it's not guard, but I have to constantly be like at the ready to
ready.
find a way to
Yeah,
like witness to them or to show them something or to like, get them to convert, as opposed to just like appreciating that friendship for what it is and not trying to change that person because they don't need to change. Like
yeah,
it's wild how when
um,
that finally gets into your brain, how
mhm,
much more right and like
yeah,
just at peace you feel because you're not
peaceful.
constantly worried about trying to force someone else into your little narrow mold.
Yeah, so like if you grow up in a religion that's exclusive, we're right, everybody else is wrong, and we need to convert them to our way.
Right.
That's how we live our lives. It's constant, and the pressure was real. I totally understand what you're talking about. But yeah, that totally lifted from me where I no longer cared. I care like on a compassionate level, but I really don't care how other people live their lives or what they're thinking or believing or whatever, as long as nobody's getting hurt, of course.
Right, of course.
But I just don't, I just, I lost that. I don't know what you call that, evangelism. I don't know what you call it, or
Yeah.
the need to influence people or control people or coerce people or whatever.
Yeah.
That just did. Like one of my cartoons, I, there's a man talking with a woman they're having coffee or something, and he says, "Ever since I became an evangelical, I can't stop obsessing about what people do with their genitals." And
Yeah.
it's like that's what it's like. Like you're
Yeah.
obsessing about everybody around you. As a parent, you're obsessing about your kids. You want to make sure that they, stay on the path and all this kind of stuff. But that totally, like you, it is the same for me. That totally left. It's
Yeah.
wonderful.
It's
Mm,
I was talking about this with someone the other day. It is mind blowing. It is and it isn't because I grew up in it, so I get it. But it is mind
mhm,
blowing looking back now to think about how much time and energy we all put into like worrying, exactly like you said, about what other people do in the bedroom with other people that
mhm.
have nothing to do with me, or
Yeah,
anybody else around me. Like it,
yeah,
but we are so worried, or we were so worried about this, and you're seeing it come up right now again because we're having this terrible resurgence of Christian nationalism and fascism and all this really exciting, fun stuff. Where like we just talked about the other day, this woman who like went into the school library and like checked out books on LGBTQ history because she thought it was like a moral adult issue that children shouldn't be exposed to, and it's like, okay, so are we just also canceling all history of straight people and what they did? Like, because
yeah, yeah,
they've turned it into this people's sexuality again that has nothing to do with them,
yeah,
into this moral issue, just and they sexualize people who shouldn't be sexualized because like they're just people,
yeah,
um
yeah.
and like,
Yeah, I should do a cartoon about evangelicalism being a Karen. It's a
oh
Karen,
my god, it is.
constantly
Yeah.
checking on people, monitoring people. And like there's a video, maybe you've seen it, probably have seen it, of this pastor down there in the States. I'm in Canada, by the way,
Lucky you.
but down there in the States where he doesn't basically say, he actually says that gay people should be shot, like they need to be put to death. And extremely violent, extremely graphic, extremely full of hate and cruelty and like, but see that he's saying out loud what must be thought, right? At the natural conclusion, if we are right, everybody else is wrong. And if they're wrong, they're going to hell and they're evil and their father's the devil. then the logical conclusion to that would be what he's saying. He's saying out loud what they're
Yes.
thinking. That's
Yep,
my
you're on my. I was literally just thinking about that and going to say it as my next point. So like we're on the same wavelength. But people keep messaging me and saying like, "Have you seen this? Are you going to address it?" And like, yeah, I'm going to address it, but I'm not going to address it in the way that everybody else is addressing it or talking about it. Not because they're wrong, but because like this is not surprising to me. It's
no, it's not.
It's not
surprising
remotely
to me.
surprising to me because I grew up in a church that would see gay marriage illegal. Like,
Yep.
why? It is a very logical outgrowth of this
Yeah.
theology that believes that if you believe anything different than them, right? Anything different, don't even forget being gay or lesbian or trans, just you believe something different than them, you're going to hell. So like, and in the same theology, they believe that being gay is a sin, being part of the LGBTQ is a sin, not only a sin, it's an abomination. And they're basing their entire voting, moral, whatever, on a verse that says that these people should be stoned, right? Like, so how then would you be surprised by this in order for these people to, it's just a logical outgrowth, right? Most people aren't going to say this out loud. Most people do not want to, Christians do not want to say, yeah, they should all be rounded up, tried, and executed. First of all, tried, if you tried them in a court of law today, you'd lose. So what you mean is you want a theocracy, and then you want to try them in that theocracy, because it's only there that you're going to get the outcome you want. And then you are going to execute them because you've decided that you get to be the executioner of those that are an abomination. It doesn't matter that the Bible also talks about other abominations, other sins. Nope, this is the only one. But if you believe that people are all going to go to hell because they believe differently than you, then rounding people up and shooting them is actually, like, if you think about it, it's actually less bad than sending people to hell for all eternity, right? And that's a really horrifying thing to say, but I think people are missing that. Like, if these people believe that anybody is going to hell for anything that they've done, shooting them would be a better option. It's just that you would have to be responsible for shooting them. And, like, when they go to hell, your hands, well, I told you. Right?
Yeah.
Now, obviously, I'm not advocating for any of this, but what I'm saying is when evangelicals say this stuff, nobody should be surprised by it.
No, I'm not surprised by it. I remember when I was a teenager, a pastor preaching about, there's a story, is it Deuteronomy maybe, or Leviticus, where Phineas, they're having some kind of a meeting, and there's rumor that a man and a woman are committing adultery in a tent, and he grabs a spear and he goes and he thrusts his spear through the both of them.
Right.
And he's a hero. And I remember the pastor preaching and uplifting this guy as a hero, and that we need to have that same kind of zeal today. And how is this not ruining people? Yeah, it's incredible. Frightful.
Yeah, it's very similar to me. Like, even though forever and ever the Christians that I grew up around, the evangelicals, were saying that they wanted abortion to be outlawed, fully, like full stop, no exceptions, that they wanted to put people in power that would do this. They made no secrets or qualms about it, and then now that it's happening, people are like, oh my God, I'm so shocked. How did this happen? Why is this happening? And it's like, y'all have not been listening. Like, and I know not everybody grew up in the church, so maybe you're not hearing it, but for those of us that did, and those of us that are telling you and have been telling you that, like, this is what they're doing in the churches, we just get called alarmists, or like, that's never going to happen, blah, 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 blah. And like, I don't think people understand the zeal, commitment, whatever you want to call it, to their ends.
It's like in the States with the elections now, one of the big concerns is that it seems that the more right you are, the more right wing you are, the more likely you will be to vote for a charismatic leader. Like, you'll get out and vote because you want to see your hero become president. And it's
Yeah.
the Democrats, they are having a difficult time getting more and more people out to vote. You know, the same thing happens all over the world, including Canada. And it's because they're louder. Hate is louder.
Yeah.
Violence is cheating works. You know what I mean? Like, so, and we're too often, we can't believe it's happening, or we sort of naively assume everything's going to work out, or we don't need to interfere or interrupt or interject, or, you know, but like we really need to do something. And you know, because it's really happening. Like you said, like this is happening. This is happening in church. And what do they call that? Grooming a terrorist. What's that called? Not grooming.
Radicalization.
Radicalizing. Yes.
Yeah.
It's happening. It's happening in these churches.
I mean, if you see these pictures that have come out of like pastors with their wife and kids, and they're like 95,000 guns lying around them, if you don't think that that's radicalization, like I don't know what you're looking at, but like that's insane. And I heard a phrase once, the right falls in line and the left falls in love. And so you have a lot of people on the left who, I mean, we saw it like, when was it, 2016? Yeah, when we had Bernie Sanders versus Hillary Clinton in the primaries. And like, I loved Bernie Sanders, loved him. I thought the way it all went down with Hillary was bullshit, garbage, probably a bit corrupt, like it wasn't good. However, a bunch of people then decided, fuck it. Well, my guy didn't get what I wanted. It didn't go the way I wanted. And yeah, I get it. We don't like cheating or corruption. I'm not saying that happened or it didn't happen. I don't know. We don't like the perception of it. But like, okay, well, this is who you have. This is who you get now. Or you get this other person, right? You either get this person that you don't like or a literal fascist.
Yeah. I heard an interesting interview of a Russian journalist, and she was an expert in analyzing like Putin and Russian ideology and, you know, all this stuff. And she was saying, she keeps trying to inform the West that Putin's strategy has always been, number one, take everything you want, like go big, like take everything you want. Crimea, Ukraine, you know, you name it. You take everything or try to take everything. Second, don't ever back down, ever. Don't ever, 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 ever back down. Just say it's yours and you're going to take it back or whatever. And the third one is eventually, in order to appease everybody, the West will, you know, compromise and give them something. And Putin knows this. You try to take everything, but knowing that you will get something eventually.
Yep.
And that's what people are doing right now in conservatism, in my opinion, is they're going for everything, knowing that they're going to get a lot, you know, if they keep this up. Like, and so, you know, we're seeing it in the United States with abortion and you know, things like that, where they're actually gaining ground. Oh yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even say gaining ground. They've gained the ground. We're just waiting for sort of the hammer to fall, like officially. But I think also that it's interesting to me to watch. I mean, I can only watch so much of it because it drives me absolutely bonkers. But the left, it feels like in America anyway, and I get it, right? Like but they keep trying to take the like high ground. They keep trying to take the high road, and like meanwhile, the right has blown up the entire chessboard. Like, I know that's not a one-to-one analogy, right? But they have laid waste to the earth, let alone, like, there is no more high road, and they keep trying to take it, thinking at some point they're going to be met, right? Like, we're doing the moral or the respectable thing, and the right is like, great, keep doing that. We're going to keep doing this because this is working. We're getting power. We're getting wins. That's what we want. I don't know how else to tell people that, like, all they want is power. They don't care how they get it. That's what they want. And they're getting it. Yeah, it's I like earlier I compared it like to cheating, like in a game. Let's say baseball or hockey or whatever. Where I'm from Canada, I'll use hockey,
Yeah,
where they they just put too many people on the ice. They hit the referees. Uh, they go offside. They don't care. They
right.
you know hit extra
And people keep
hard.
screaming like, "Well, there are rules. There are rules." Like, okay,
Yeah, you shouldn't
and
do that. This is a Democrat. You
yeah, you shouldn't
shouldn't
do
do
that.
that. But they it's
There's no consequence for it.
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no.
It's like this book I read recently by a Jewish journalist. Her name is Levin, about white. Uh, shoot, I keep forgetting the name of it. Something about white supremacy, culture wars, and she went underground as a online as a
Goodness.
white supremacist man, and just did a whole lot of research and wrote this book. And basically, her argument is, we've got to stop hate speech on the internet because it actually is radicalizing people out there. It's actually
Yeah.
causing violence and death. And the hate comes through the screen and gets absorbed by people out there. And somehow things like Facebook and Twitter and TikTok and Instagram, all these social media platforms need to regulate hate speech online,
Yep.
so that we can somehow get a cap on this stuff. Like that preacher that we're talking about down in the States who said gays should be shot. That is somebody's loading up. Like that's what I'm
Yes.
afraid of.
Yes. I mean,
Taking
I
that as
think
inspiration.
if you're seeing I mean, just look at the Buffalo shooting. Like the guy's
Exactly.
gun had a Bible verse on it. Like, hi,
Exactly.
hello. And I think,
Yeah.
yeah, and people will say like, well, that's not Christianity, right? Like, yeah, I get that you want to separate those things, but guess what? Christianity in America is white supremacy. And if you like, they are so closely bound that unless you are actively working within your church group to undo and repent for white supremacy,
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter that you don't want to involve yourself with those Christians, right? Like, yeah, maybe it's not you doing that, but like the institution of the evangelical church in the United States has been in bed with white supremacy so long that they're almost indistinguishable at this point.
Yeah. Totally. Like it's one's birthed out of the other. In fact, I believe that
Yeah.
they are very closely enmeshed. Yeah, very much enmeshed. And I feel the gravitational pull of institutions is towards abuse. That's my opinion. It's just the gravitational pull towards all bureaucracy, including churches, is towards the dehumanization of its members. And we
Right.
need to work intentionally every day to prevent that from happening in the church, in the school, in our work, in government, in medicine, you name it. And right down to the DMV, right down to relationships, right down to families. You need to intentionally work every day. Try not to control people, manipulate people, coerce people, harm people, abuse people. It takes a lot of work, and so that's why I think we need more and more people out there doing the work of, this whole thing about not all churches. It's like not all men. It's like not all white people. That's basically you're deflecting. Basically, you're saying you care more about the accused than you do the victim, and it's time that we cared about the victims now.
I mean,
in my opinion.
You can look at this whole SBC debacle that's been happening, right? Where I assume you've heard about this, where they had this 300-page report over 700, I think it was 700 pastors or those in leadership. And they're being effectively accused or at least accused of sexual abuse. And the SBC is basically having had a database to protect them, right? And the rush to discount this report and these people was unsurprising, but absolutely just nauseating. And
it was
then
head
when
spinning to me.
It's like I knew it was coming. I knew it was coming because I know how these churches and people operate. But then, like, when Guidepost came out with it was just like the pretty standard Pride Month, you know, like I think it was a Twitter post just saying, you know, we support this effectively. There were so many people in the SBC were like, oh, well, this is an LGBTQ company, therefore we can throw out this entire report because why should we listen to anything about sexual morality from people that support the LGBTQ? And it's like the amount of bullshit that just not surprising in the slightest, but just the fact that people can really sit there and first equate sexual immorality or sin and abuse with being a part of the LGBTQ is just like disgusting.
Yeah.
It's vile.
Yeah. Disgusting.
Beyond that, to say that like the messenger of 700 allegations of sexual abuse, and that's anyway, can just be tossed out because you don't like who told you. Yeah. Yeah. Someone needs to investigate every single one of those people that said that.
Yeah. I wonder if that's going to happen because those are just reported cases, right? And the courage it takes for somebody to report on a pastor is enormous. Right. So it's a rampant problem. I've always said spiritual abuse is a rampant problem in the church. Sexual assault is also a rampant problem. Many of the people that I looked up to and went to their events are now, you know, accused of sexual assault and stuff. It's crazy. Yeah. Not surprised, but, you know, at the same time, very, very alarming to me.
I did see someone say the other day, like, you know, if you would have told me just a few years ago that there would be all these reports of abuse coming out of the church and the church would be trying to cover them up and protect abusers, like, I would have never believed you. And I was like, oh, you didn't grow up as a woman in the evangelical church then. Because,
I remember that when you did that. That was great.
Like, you're surprised? Like, the level of... Sorry, this just makes me so angry. And I'm sure the person didn't mean anything by it, and I don't... No shame to that person. But the level of privilege that it takes to think that these churches that are largely dominated by cis white men, like, that they wouldn't try to protect their own power at the expense of women. Yeah. Yeah. I don't give a shit. I mean, sure, some of them do, but like largely they care about power way more than they ever care about people. And especially if those people are women. Mm-hmm. Like, how do you go to a church that teaches complementarianism or the subordination of women and then think that they're going to elevate a woman's experience over protecting a man? That's what women are there for.
Well, it's the protection of power, their personal power, and that personal power is protected by the system. So they have to protect the system that protects their power. It's the same with any politician. They can abuse their power, but they have a system in place that protects them with whatever they do. Like, you know, with some of the senators and so on in the states who are getting away with crazy shit, it's because their state loves them. And so they got to keep nursing the protection of the system, which will protect them with whatever they do. Yeah. Again, and the same with pastors. Pastors care about their own power, but the denomination or the church, if it's an independent or whatever, it's important to protect that as well.
Yeah. It's another instance, in my opinion, of idolization. You idolize the people that are in power over you. And if you suddenly have to stand up against them because it's not the popular position, you run the risk of making yourself incredibly vulnerable. And then you hear all these things like, well, think of all the good this person has done and all the harm this will bring. Think of all the good this person, like all the people that this person is helping on a weekly basis. Think of how many of them will be harmed. And it's like,
Yeah.
Just because this guy might not be there anymore, find a new guy who doesn't sexually abuse people. And if you can't, then maybe you should think about that for a while. Sorry, I get fired up about this. Yeah.
Well, we should. We should get fired up about this. Yeah. It's like I'm really I don't know if we should go there. Maybe you can edit this out. I don't know. I'm just going to mention this, but the Me Too movement took a huge blow this year with and women and so on. I'm really concerned. I'm really sad about the plight of women in the West and around the world, of course. But I saw a woman the other day on Twitter. She was saying, "I don't like the word complementarianism. It's too too many syllables, blah, blah, blah. Is there a better word for it?" And somebody answered misogyny.
Yeah. Sexism.
That's basically what sexism, misogyny. That's basically what it is. Yeah.
I don't even, it seemed like when the Me Too movement first started, there was like the potential for it to be really powerful. And I think I stupidly felt hope. But the reality of the situation is that people largely, I don't want to say people largely, there are many, many people who want to parse experience and be pedantic because they would rather figure out how they can discredit you or they want to protect, if you say, I was coerced into having sex, and no, I didn't scream no, and no, I didn't even really say no, it was just this person wore me down by asking me over and over, making me feel bad and doing all this stuff. A lot of people are going to see that as something they've done.
Yes.
Right? I've done that to someone, and they don't want to see themselves as a sexually abusive person or as an abuser or as a predator. And so what are they going to do? They're going to say, no, that was your choice, right? It doesn't matter if this other person asked you a million times and made you feel bad and manipulated you, right? That doesn't matter. What matters is that you said ultimately yes, or at least allowed it to happen. And I feel like, as soon as women felt empowered to say like, I've experienced this too, to varying degrees, right? Some people with really horrific rape and other people with just like, I'm constantly whistled at walking down the street, right? Which do I think getting whistled at is sexual abuse? No. But is it sort of does it sort of reinforce this culture of women just being sexualized and that's what they're there for, and they don't get consent in how they're treated by random men, and men feel empowered to do that to women? But then, everybody jumped in with, well, that's not sexual abuse, and that shouldn't be included, and it's frustrating to see how wildly sort of nitpicked to death the movement's been when the point of it was like all women, almost every single woman, every woman I know has been harassed or abused or assaulted. And that's the point here, right? That's the point. Yeah. The point is not how do we break down every level of abuse or assault or harassment. That's not really our job. I don't want to say it's not our job, but we have a legal system that works through that and people that work on that. The point is we live in a culture where women are subjected to this on a daily basis. And if you have a daughter, it is guaranteed, damn near guaranteed, she will experience multiple occurrences of this in her life. I have 4 little sisters. I can't even count the amount of times shit like this has happened to us.
I have a daughter, and there was one day in the summer, one summer we were, pre-COVID anyway, we were walking down the city street together, and we were going out to have lunch, and I couldn't believe, I was hyper aware of all the men around who were gawking at her. Some were whistling at her, some were saying things at her, some were just looking at her, boobs or whatever. It was I and here I am, I'm her protective dad. And it's like, and she said, Dad, this happens all the time. It's not just today. This is all the time.
Yeah.
It
And
blew me
women get
away.
to a place where we just, I don't even know what to call it.
It's normalized. It's just normalized.
Yeah. I've definitely been out with like, or I've talked to people. Sorry. What was that?
Go.
I was going to say, like, I've definitely had points where people I've dated have been like, do you not see? And this is not meant to sound like, oh my God, I'm so hot, right? Like, that's not it. I think it happens to almost, I would say all women. But like, do you not see the amount of guys that look at you, or that turn their head when you walk by, or that like follow you with their eyes, or like when they think you've passed, turn around and check you out from behind? And I'm like, if I paid attention to every instance of that in my day, I would lose my goddamn mind. Yeah. Because women's bodies are just sexualized for existing. So it actually has nothing to do with like how traditionally attractive a woman might be. And that's why I'm saying it's not like I'm like, oh, this happened to me because I'm like so hot, right? This happens to women all the time, all kinds of women everywhere all the time, because women's bodies are seen as inherently sexual by men, and men they feel entitled to any kind of gratification that they can get from a woman's bodies. And before anyone starts, I know it's not all men, I know. But I'm talking about this in general terms because there's no way to parse out which car driving down the street is going to be the guy that whistles at you. We just know it's going to happen.
Yeah. No, it's true. My daughter and I, and Lisa and I, my wife and I, we talk a lot about it, and women friends that I have, and it's just so embedded in the culture. So like a man looks at a woman, thinks she's beautiful, whistles, the woman says, hey, or whatever, and he goes, what, you're beautiful, you don't want to acknowledge that? But that's the entitlement they feel, is that they not only acknowledge it, but they can touch it and use it if they want. Yeah.
Yep. And the other thing is, and I was talking about this with someone the other day, like because men on the whole view women as sort of objects, or like at least not fully human, or as something they're entitled to, they think that the highest compliment they can pay a woman is that they're beautiful. And they think, because women are taught in this society to effectively to hate themselves from birth, that the woman will then deflect this compliment because she couldn't possibly think that she was pretty or beautiful without the man imbuing her with this value, because like she couldn't think she's beautiful unless this guy tells her, I think you're beautiful. And so like something that I think is funny to do every now and again, like if I'm walking down the street and someone says something like that to me, is just to say, I know. Yeah. And then to just watch their heads explode. Because it's not that if someone's paying me a genuine compliment that I want to be a dickhead about it. Like, no. But like, if some random guy is saying that walking down the street, it's not a genuine compliment. It's him feeling entitled to tell me how he feels about the way I look, which I don't care. And it doesn't matter to me. And he shouldn't have a right to tell me that. I don't walk past him and say like, I hate your fucking shirt. Like that, like why, right? And so like, but it becomes this thing where like that really is the like highest compliment that like men think they can give a woman, and when in reality it's the least interesting or important thing about women. Yeah. Like there is so much more to anybody, but I'm just speaking as a woman, than just the fact that we are aesthetically pleasing to somebody else, right? Or that they would sleep with us, because that's effectively what they're saying. What they're saying is, you're so pretty, I would definitely sleep with you. That's the right. Yeah. And so it's just, sorry, go ahead.
In the church, the sexism and the misogyny in the church, of course, it's all spiritualized and it's all supported by the Bible. And, I mentioned before, some of the things that are my hottest topics is the Bible, women, and LGBTQ. Those are the top three.
Right.
And so if I go after the Bible, like one of my favorite cartoons is the Bible plus your interpretation equals your interpretation. Yeah. And then if I do a cartoon about elevating women or it's feminist in any way, my God, the reaction I get from people, it's just, I can't believe it. I really can't. I can't believe it. The LGBTQ thing, yeah, of course, is another issue. And we're in Pride Month, so I'm having a ball
Of
this
course,
month.
gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, I've talked about this a billion times. Because the church, at least the evangelical church, is so deeply entrenched in purity culture, women are taught from the time that they can effectively walk that, like, that they're inherently sexual. That, like, a man could be attracted to them, and if a man is attracted to them, then it's your fault, as in me, the woman. And that's
Yeah.
even if I'm an 8-year-old girl that's, like, wearing a spaghetti strap tank top, and now I'm being told I shouldn't wear that because it's not modest enough, it's too revealing. Why is it too revealing? Because someone might see my body and be attracted to it, right? We're not talking about the fact that this would be a grown man attracted to an 8-year-old girl. We're talking about, I need to cover up because I could cause someone to sin. And so when people are like, I just can't understand why all this abuse is taking place in the church. Well, buddy, I could tell you, like, it's baked in. It's a feature, not a bug.
I like that. It's a feature, not a bug.
Yeah, feel free. It's not. I'm not a Jessica original, so please take it and run with it.
No. I've heard it before, but I got to remember that. And the thing with women about needing to be, the whole purity thing and hiding your body and all that. At the same time, they are sex objects in the church. Like, if you're married, you got to please your husband whenever they ask. It's your body is his, not yours. That whole stuff, right? And it's I know a lot of women who are stuck in those kind of relationships, and it's extremely dehumanizing.
Yeah.
Thing. They feel trapped, and it's all thanks to the church. It's profound.
Yeah. There's a lot of problems, a lot going on.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I try to address these things in my cartoons. I think the church is here to stay. Because people are people, and they need to gather or want to gather, and they'll gather around common values and stuff. So the point of my cartoons and everything is just try to lob rather some small grenades into the middle of their fantasies, and create some disruption, and hopefully some churches might get it, some Christians might get it, believers might get it, and just I hope to encourage some people, LGBTQ, IA+, women, people who are doubting, questioning, or becoming atheist or agnostic or whatever. I just, that's what I'm trying to do. Is my point is, my thing is, I think everybody should have the freedom to be their authentic selves. That's me.
What?
That's what I do. For me, for you, for women, for doubters, for atheists, for gay people, trans people. I don't care who you are. You have the right to be your authentic self, and to be free. So that's what I'm trying to accomplish. Yeah.
So on that
note, I love your work, by the way.
Oh, thank you, thank you.
No, really, you're really good. I got to ask you a question. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, please.
Do you do a lot of prep for your videos, or is that a lot off the cuff?
It's mostly off the cuff. If you hang out,
wow.
Thanks. I guess it depends on. Well, let me say this. It depends on which videos. If you're looking at like the videos I did a while back on like Revelation and commentary on that, yeah, there was a lot of prep for those videos because I wanted to make sure I wasn't just spouting off any random thing that I thought I remembered. But if you're thinking more about the videos where, I know I do some like silly stuff where I pull up pictures of weird evangelical stuff and kind of talk about it, or talk about the stuff like why I talked about recently, why this guy's saying like, well, we can all have preferences when it comes to what they want in a woman is not what they think it is. Because what they're saying is like, I'm going to announce what I like to women everywhere so that the women that I don't agree with know that I don't like them and they're not measuring up to my beauty standard, right? So like that was off the cuff. Any of my like funnier stuff off the cuff. But when I talk about scholarship, I try to be I prepare a lot for that because I want to make sure that people can trust what I'm saying.
Yeah. No, it's really, really good. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
I appreciate that. Cool. So let people know, if you don't mind, where they can find it, or they can find you, or they can find your art. Yeah, all of the
Yeah.
above. I want as many people to follow you as possible.
Okay. Well, can I announce my new book that's coming out?
Please do.
Flip It Like This. Yeah, Flip It Like This. I've got over 4,000 cartoons in my arsenal.
Wow.
And Broadleaf Books wanted to do a book with me, and so we decided on a best of cartoon. So
Oh, cool.
I had to choose like 120 cartoons out of 4,500 cartoons. That was
Quite the
really
task.
hard to do. And there's 15 or so cartoons in here that nobody's ever seen, and it's coming out in July, but you can pre-order it now. Or you can just go to nakedpastor.com, and that's my home base, and you can find me all across social media as Naked Pastor. And yeah, and I'm really good at responding.
Where can folks pre-order the book? On Amazon or?
Amazon, if you don't like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, if you don't like Barnes & Noble, Indie Books, or you can even go to your local bookstore and ask them to pre-order it for you, and they should.
Cool. So
People have done
anywhere books are sold.
Anywhere books are sold.
Perfect. Well, once again, thank you so much for being here. I did not anticipate the conversation going in that direction, but I had a great time. I am so glad we had a chance to chat, and hopefully we can do it again sometime.
Well, I'd love to. If you want to have me back on, we can talk about stuff maybe you thought we would talk about.
Yeah, definitely. We'll set it up. For now, thank you so much for watching, all of you wonderful heathens. You know what to do. Like, subscribe, comment, tell me what you think, and more than anything, please go follow David, give him all the love and support, and I will see everyone next time. Bye.
Oh shit. You done fucked up, man. Ain't nothing but a gangsta party. Y'all in deep doo-doo.